It all started so innocently. A late summer afternoon, the park humming with life, kids laughing, joggers passing by, the air heavy with the promise of autumn. That's when I met him. Handsome, charming, and effortlessly confident. He seemed to glow, a magnet pulling everyone into his orbit. My sister's child had toddled over to him, drawn by his kind smile and the ice cream cone in his hand. He laughed, crouched to the child's level, and handed him one. My sister and I exchanged glances. Even she was impressed by his warmth. Before I knew it, my sister had an excuse to leave, the child now in her arms, and suddenly it was just him and me. He introduced himself as Alex. We strolled through the park, the conversation flowing easily, like we'd known each other forever. When he walked me home that evening, I couldn't shake the giddy feeling in my chest. Alex was unlike anyone I had ever met. Attentive, funny, and somehow familiar, like a character from one of the romance novels I used to devour. The next morning my phone rang. It was 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock on a Sunday. I groggily answered, and there he was, cheerfully asking if he could see me. I had no time to even put myself together properly before he appeared on my doorstep with a bouquet of daisies. He had a boyish grin, a charm so disarming it melted away any irritation I might have had at being woken up so early. That day was magical. We had breakfast at a small, cozy pizza place, walked by the river, and laughed over a silly movie at the cinema. It was simple yet perfect, like something out of a dream. But as the days turned into weeks, and August drifted into September, the cracks in the fantasy began to appear. Alex's phone was always off. If I wanted to reach him, I couldn't. Only he could call me, and when he did, it was always brief and sporadic, as though he were sneaking time between something more important. And there was the glaring absence of any social media presence. In this day and age, who doesn't have a profile? When I brought it up, he shrugged and said he preferred to stay off the grid, avoiding all the noise of modern technology. I told myself I was being paranoid. He was just private, I thought. But the feeling gnawed at me, quiet, insistent, and growing louder by the day. September 1st, a day that shattered the illusion Alex had so carefully crafted. I was heading to meet a friend when I saw him. I wasn't looking for him, but there he was across the street, holding hands with a woman. A beautiful woman. Walking beside them were 2 children, laughing and chattering away, holding his other hand. My heart stopped. At first, I thought I was mistaken. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was someone who looked like him. But then I heard his voice. That warm, familiar voice that had once felt like home. And the way he spoke to the woman, his tone tender and filled with affection. It was a side of him I hadn't seen before. I crossed the street without thinking. I followed them, staying far enough behind to avoid being noticed, but close enough to hear. I needed answers. I needed to understand. The pieces of their conversation floated back to me like knives slicing through my chest. "I love you," he said to her, his tone earnest and full of conviction. "And I love our family." Those words broke something inside me. I stopped walking and stood there, frozen on the sidewalk as they continued ahead, oblivious to my presence. My stomach churned and my vision blurred. I turned and walked away, my feet carrying me to the nearest bus stop. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. That evening I confronted him. I wasn't angry, not at first. I was hurt, confused, and desperate for an explanation. But Alex, oh Alex, was a master manipulator. He spun a story so tragic it almost sounded convincing. "She's just my wife on paper," he said, his eyes pleading. "We're only together for the kids. We're getting divorced soon. I swear to you it's over between us. I love you, not her." For a fleeting moment, I wanted to believe him. But deep down I knew. The way he had spoken to her earlier, the love in his voice. It wasn't the tone of a man who was just staying for the kids. It was the tone of a man who was in love with his wife. I tried to move on. I blocked his number, deleted our messages, and swore to myself I would never speak to him again. But the betrayal lingered like a wound that refused to heal. I spent sleepless nights replaying every moment we had shared, every laugh, every touch, every whispered promise. How could someone who made me feel so special turn out to be such a liar? Then one day, curiosity got the better of me. I searched for him online, using every clue I could remember. It took hours, but I finally found him, under a different name. There he was, smiling in photos with his wife and kids. A perfect family. A picture-perfect lie. The worst part? He looked happy. Genuinely happy. And that's when it hit me. I was never part of his world. I was a distraction. A temporary escape from the life he had built. I was nothing to him. The rage that had been simmering inside me boiled over. I wanted him to feel the humiliation, the betrayal, the heartbreak he had inflicted on me. I wanted him to pay. I started small. I created a fake profile on social media and followed his wife. She was stunning, elegant and poised, the kind of woman who seemed untouchable. She posted photos of their family vacations, their date nights, their life together. A life I had unknowingly intruded on. I debated for days whether to reach out to her. Part of me felt guilty. She didn't deserve this. But another part of me, the part that couldn't let go of the hurt, needed her to know the truth. I drafted a message, attaching screenshots of our texts and the photos Alex had sent me. My fingers hovered over the send button, my heart pounding. And then, with a deep breath, I clicked it. The response came quicker than I expected. She thanked me, politely but curtly, and said she would handle it. I didn't know what that meant, but I could imagine the confrontation that was about to unfold in their household. A week later, Alex showed up at my door. His face was a mix of anger and desperation. "Why would you do this?" he demanded. "You've ruined my family." "No, Alex," I said, my voice steady. "You ruined your family the moment you decided to lie. Don't blame me for the mess you created." He left without another word, slamming the door behind him. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt empty. But as the days turned into weeks, the emptiness began to fade. I realized that Alex's betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of his character, or a lack thereof. I had trusted him, and he had betrayed that trust. But I wouldn't let his actions define me. For the first time in months, I felt free. The aftermath of Alex's betrayal left a mark, but it also taught her invaluable lessons about trust, both in others and in herself. At first, the world seemed cruel and unrelenting. Every man she saw reminded her of Alex. Every smile from a stranger felt like a trap. The whispers of doubt followed her everywhere. What if I can never trust again? What if I let someone fool me like that again? What if I'm not enough? Her sister, who had been her rock throughout, pulled her out of the house one rainy Saturday. "We're not doing this anymore," her sister said, handing her an umbrella and practically dragging her to a local cafe. "What are we doing?" she asked, her voice listless. "We're talking," her sister said firmly. "You're not going to let some sleazeball like Alex rob you of your joy. You're better than this." They sat by the window, sipping hot chocolate as the rain poured down outside. At first, she just listened as her sister talked about everything under the sun. Her job, her child, her latest kitchen disaster. Slowly, the conversation shifted. Her sister started asking questions that cut deeper. "When's the last time you did something for yourself?" her sister asked. She thought about it and came up empty. For the past few months, her life had revolved around Alex, either being with him, thinking about him, or recovering from his lies. Somewhere along the way, she had lost herself. "You need to stop living for other people," her sister said. "Alex doesn't deserve this power over you. Start focusing on yourself. What makes you happy? What do you want?" It was a simple question, but it sparked something in her. For the first time in a long time, she began to consider what she wanted. The first thing she did was enroll in a photography class. She'd always loved taking pictures, capturing the beauty of everyday moments, but it had been years since she'd picked up a camera. The class was small, just a handful of people, but it was exactly what she needed. It gave her a sense of purpose, a creative outlet, and a reason to leave the house. On the first day, the instructor asked everyone to share why they had joined the class. When it was her turn, she hesitated. "I just needed a change," she said finally. "I needed to remind myself that there's more to life than what I've been through." The instructor nodded, a kind smile on his face. "That's as good a reason as any," he said. "Photography is about seeing the world in a new way. Maybe it'll help you see yourself differently, too." Over the next few weeks, she threw herself into the class. She took her camera everywhere, snapping pictures of anything that caught her eye. An elderly couple holding hands on a park bench, a child chasing bubbles in the square, the way the sunlight filtered through the leaves in the park. Each photo felt like a small piece of herself, captured and preserved. Through photography, she began to see beauty in the world again. And slowly, she started to see beauty in herself. One day, while she was out taking photos by the river, she ran into someone she hadn't seen in years, Daniel, an old college acquaintance. He was there with his dog, a goofy golden retriever named Max, who promptly ran up to her and tried to steal her camera bag. "Max!" "No!" Daniel called, running over to rein in the overly friendly dog. "Sorry about that. He thinks everything is a game." "It's fine," she said, laughing as she knelt to pet the dog. "He's adorable." When she stood up, their eyes met, and recognition dawned on both of their faces. "Wait, Daniel," she said, her eyebrows shooting up. He grinned. "Hey, I thought that was you. It's been, what, 7 years?" "Something like that," she said, smiling. "What are you doing here?" "Just moved back to the city," he said. "Needed a fresh start." "What about you? Still taking the world by storm?" She laughed. "Not quite. I'm just figuring things out." Daniel tilted his head, studying her. "Well, whatever you're doing, it seems to be working. You look happy." The compliment caught her off guard. She wasn't sure if happy was the right word, but she realized that she did feel lighter than she had in a long time. They exchanged numbers before parting ways, and as she walked home, she couldn't help but feel a spark of something she hadn't felt in months: hope. Daniel and she started meeting up occasionally, first for coffee, then for walks with Max, and eventually for dinners that stretched into late-night conversations. He was easy to talk to, his sense of humor lightening even her darkest moods. But more than that, he listened. Really listened. When she finally told him about Alex, she expected him to judge her or pity her. Instead, he just nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That sucks," he said simply. "What he did to you. That's on him, not you. But it sounds like you've come out of it stronger." "Stronger," she said, raising an eyebrow. "I feel like I'm barely holding it together." "Trust me," he said. "The fact that you're still standing after all that, that's strength, and you don't give yourself enough credit for it." His words stayed with her long after their conversation ended. For so long, she had seen herself as a victim, someone who had been used and discarded. But Daniel made her realize that she was more than that. She was a survivor. Months passed, and with each day, she felt more like herself. Photography had become her passion, and she was even considering turning it into a career. Her friendship with Daniel grew stronger, though she took things slow, cautious about opening her heart again. One evening, they sat by the river, watching the sun set over the water. Daniel turned to her, his expression serious. "I know you've been through a lot," he said, "and I don't want to rush you into anything, but I need you to know that I care about you. A lot." Her heart skipped a beat. "Daniel, I care about you too. But I'm scared." "I know," he said, his voice gentle. "And I'll wait, as long as it takes." For the first time, she realized that love didn't have to be rushed or forced. It could be patient, kind, and healing. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to take that step. As they sat there, the sun dipping below the horizon, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Her story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, she would write it on her own terms. As weeks turned into months, Emma found herself falling into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Her photography began to gain recognition. She submitted her work to a local exhibit and was shocked when her series was accepted. The theme of her photographs was healing in the everyday, and each image represented a fragment of her journey. From sunlit streets to the quiet, reflective moments by the river, the photos were pieces of herself, sewn together to form a story of resilience. Daniel was there on the night of the exhibit, standing proudly by her side. "You did this," he said, his voice full of admiration. "You turned something painful into something beautiful." For the first time, she felt proud of herself, not just for the exhibit, but for how far she had come. But as much as she tried to focus on the future, the past continued to haunt her. Alex's betrayal still lingered in the back of her mind, like a shadow that refused to fade. One evening, while scrolling through her social media, she came across a photo of Alex. It had been shared by a mutual acquaintance, and he was smiling in the picture, his arm around another woman. Emma felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name. It wasn't jealousy or anger. It was the lingering bitterness of unfinished business. "Do you think I should confront him?" she asked Daniel later that night as they walked Max through the park. Daniel hesitated. "What do you hope to get out of it?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Closure, maybe. I just feel like he walked away without facing any consequences. Like he got to rewrite the story in his favor." Daniel stopped walking, turning to face her. "If you think it'll help you move on, then do it. But don't let him pull you back into his chaos. You've come too far to let someone like him hold you down again." Emma nodded, his words sinking in. She didn't want Alex to have any more power over her life. But she also knew she couldn't fully move forward without confronting the past. The next day, she sent Alex a message asking to meet. To her surprise, he agreed. Emma waited for Alex at a small cafe in the city. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her cup of tea, but she took a deep breath to steady herself. She wasn't the same person she had been months ago. She was stronger now. When Alex arrived, he looked just as she remembered. Charming, confident, and completely unaware of the damage he had caused. He greeted her with a smile, as if they were old friends catching up. "So, how have you been?" he asked, sitting across from her. Emma resisted the urge to roll her eyes. "Let's skip the small talk, Alex. I didn't ask to meet you to reminisce." His smile faltered, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of unease in his expression. "All right. What's this about?" "It's about what you did to me," she said, her voice steady. "The lies, the manipulation. The way you used me and made me feel like I was the one who wasn't enough." Alex opened his mouth to protest, but she held up a hand to stop him. "I'm not here for an apology. I don't need one from you. I just need you to hear me." She laid it all out. The hurt, the betrayal, the months of self-doubt she had endured because of him. She told him how his actions had made her question her worth, and how she had fought tooth and nail to rebuild herself. When she finished, Alex looked down at his hands, unable to meet her gaze. "I didn't realize. I didn't think." "You didn't think," Emma said, her tone firm. "That's the problem, Alex. You didn't think about anyone but yourself." He looked up at her, his eyes filled with something that almost resembled regret. "I'm sorry," he said softly. Emma nodded. "I hope you mean that. But like I said, I didn't come here for an apology. I came here to let go." She stood up, grabbing her bag. "Take care of yourself, Alex. And next time, think before you hurt someone." As she walked out of the cafe, she felt an incredible sense of relief. The weight she had been carrying for months was finally gone. Alex no longer had any power over her. That night, she called Daniel and told him everything. He listened quietly, his steady presence reassuring her. "I'm proud of you," he said when she finished. "That couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't," she admitted, "but it was worth it." As she hung up the phone, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. She realized that closure didn't come from someone else's apology. It came from her own decision to move forward. She climbed into bed that night, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She was ready to embrace it, and with Daniel by her side, she knew she wouldn't have to face it alone.